I am joined today by the river legend himself, Mr. Frank Morton. Thank you for coming back to spend some time with me.
Glad to, anytime.
Well, since we last spoke, sir, I know you've been on a trip to Austria and you've been up to Paducah for a little award ceremony. I'd love to talk about those things today. Which came first, the trip to Austria or the presentation?
So we went to Paducah for the Waterways Council Inc. meeting, and it was followed on Thursday, December the 8th, by the River Bell Luncheon given by Siemens Church Institute. It's a fundraiser done for them. It's 22nd year that they've done it up there. And Jim Guidry from Kirby was the River Bell recipient, and I was the recipient of the River Legend. Then subsequent on the day after that in the morning, I got up real early. I flew back to the Gulf Coast, went to a rehearsal dinner for my nephew who was getting married. The next day they got married. And 2 days after that, we went to Austria, stayed for a little more than a week. And it was cold, but beautiful.
Tell me more about your trip. I've never traveled internationally.
All right, well, it's a long way. So we flew from Gulfport to Houston, then United into Europe. We went to Vienna, spent 3 or 4 nights, 4 or 5 nights there. We got in just at dusk. So the first night we just kind of went out on our own and visited a couple of bars and got a bite to eat and talked to our guide who came and picked us up the next day. We got a tour of the city, automobile tour of the city, went to the Summer Palace, went to the Old City, and that night we ate at a Austrian style, but it was modern, but it was Austrian style food, and Wiener Schnitzel and all that kind of stuff. That was great. And we went to the Christmas markets, and the next day we walked around and went to the ballet that night with the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. It was a great ballet called The Girl Who Was Treated Badly, but it was in French, of course, and enjoyed that. The following day, we toured the old city on foot and went to the exercises session of the Lipizzaner stallions at the Spanish Riding Academy, the big white horses that do all the fancy stuff. Then that night, we went to a concert at the Summer Palace. Half the concert was Mozart, the other half was Strauss. There were a bunch of operas that were included in it. They had 2 opera singers who were fantastic. And they were all about a man and a woman either having a spat, a lover's quarrel, or making up after having a lover's quarrel. And their facial and body expressions went so well with the theme of it. I was really impressed by it. International languages music. You don't need to know the words, understand them completely, because particularly with opera, it's so melodramatic, and you know what the basic storyline is to begin with. And then again, the next day we went to a bunch of churches and went to the Old City, where the Habsburgs reigned over the Austrian-Hungarian Empire for all that period of time, and the Holy Roman Empire. And then we went to a dinner that night in a vineyard. There's a lot of small vineyards around Vienna, and these people made their own wine, and it was a working farm too, so we may have eaten one of their animals, I don't know. But it was very good. We had a great time. Then the next day we got up and took a train to Salzburg, and we spent the next couple of days in Salzburg. It was a 3-hour train drive. It was gorgeous. We spent the rest of the day walking the old city. So Vienna is a population of about 2 million. Salzburg is a population of about 200,000, and over 20% of those are students. So the city is divided into 3 portions: the old city, the new old city, and then the new city, each representing about 1/3 of the population. So we spent our time we stayed in the new old city, but we spent our time across the river in the old city, and went to the fortress, Hohenzollern Fortress, over the city, toured the surrounding areas, went for a sleigh ride, had a couple of great meals. Then the last night we were there, we went to Oberndorf, which is where the song Silent Night, Holy Night was written and first performed. And we went, so there was a school teacher by the name of Gerber. He was teaching school in a village 3 kilometers away, and he and the priest, Father Moore, were good friends. So we began by going to the school that Gerber taught at, which is still a school today, except for the second floor, which is a museum to Gerber and the song. So we went through all of that, and we went to 3 kilometers over to Oberndorf and went to Silent Night Chapel, and it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Went to the Christmas markets, a lot of fun. Found out the real story about Silent Night, Holy Night, and it very uplifting story. Anyway, it was a lot of fun, and then we we came back. It's a long trip back home also, but it seems longer coming than it does going, because you're excited going, and coming you're exhausted. So
Sure. Was it just you and your wife?
no, so we were going to do this last year. My youngest sister and her husband both turned 60, and they wanted to go to Europe, do a trip for their birthdays. And they asked me if there was anything that we particularly wanted to do in Europe. And I said, yeah, Jenny and I want to go to Vienna and Salzburg and go to the chapel, Silent Night Chapel. Told them all about what we wanted to do. And they said, that sounds great. So we booked it for last year. And then Austria closed right around Thanksgiving. So they bumped us back to this year. They honored all the commitments and everything, because we had prepaid the trip. It was great. Fantastic.
Was that your first time over there?
No. I've been to Europe several times. I spent 3 weeks in Germany and Austria one time, and been to Spain 4 times. And Timothy, my son, lives in the UK. I've been over there about 6 or 8 times. So yeah, I've had a few trips over yonder. I love Europe. Spain is really easy. Vienna and Salzburg were so very friendly. Even when I was in Paris, I always hear these bad stories about how arrogant the French are. Well, I walked the Camino 500 miles across Spain, and flew into Paris, went down to the area Saint-Germain, they call it, where Notre Dame is. This is before it caught on fire. And my brother and a good friend of mine, and we met my niece and her husband who were over there. And we decided we just go to a sidewalk cafe in that area. Of course, it's a tourist area, so you hear these things about how rude the French can be. And the guy came up to us, and I said, we don't I speak a little bit of French, but probably insult you if I try to do it. He said, that's fine, I speak English. And I said, well, we're here for good French wine, good cheese, and some good meat. Just tell us what we ought to have. And he did. It was a very, very reasonable price. And the guy was very knowledgeable. He talked to us and very friendly and good service, and had a great time. The next day, drove the train, went to Bordeaux, changed trains to Saint Jean, Pied de Port, which is St. John's for the Pass. That's on the French side of the Pyrenees, the pass being the Pass of Roncesvalles. And next day, started off on our 500-mile journey by foot across Spain to Santiago. So we walked the Camino, had a great time. It took us 15 miles a day, 33 days of walking, and then we took 6 or 8 days for sightseeing and staying in towns a little extra and things like that. We really enjoyed it. Great time.
When was that?
That was 2018.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been outside of the country. I've barely been around this country. But tell me what you can about the whole process with this River Legend Award, up to like from nomination to reception.
Well, they have a committee that that selects these people. I mean, I don't know what the process is. I don't know if there's a recommendation from the board at Siemens Church Institute or whatever, but there's a Riverbell committee. The two chairman of it was Merritt Lane and Darian from president of Marquette, and they somehow or another came up with Jim Guidry and myself. It's a fundraiser for Siemens Church Institute, and they say they raised $460,000 this year. So they were very, very pleased with that. And I think that's part of it. But the big reason they had such a big turnout this year is because Waterways Council Inc. was having their meetings there. So you not only had the river people that are interested, but you have these. So Waterways Council Inc., it's a coalition. It casts a very big net. There's a lot of ag people in it. There's labor unions involved in it. There's environmental groups involved in it, and all working cohesively together to try to improve the quality of the Mississippi River and the transportation network. So there were a lot of people in town for this thing. They had a little seminar. They put on 2 programs a year. The one in the fall, they elect their officers, and that's a educational seminar. And then the one in February or March is visiting the Hill to educate legislators and staff members about the needs and the benefits of the inland waterways, infrastructure primarily.
Okay, now take me through your trip up to Paducah and that whole few days or a week or whatever it was when you were prepping to receive the River Legend designation.
Well, I thought about this speech a long time, and I knew what I wanted to say, and I didn't know how I was going to say it. I wanted to say it short, sweet. Hopefully, it would be very understandable to people what I was trying to say. And knowing that Siemens Church is involved a lot in education and training of mariners, particularly wheelhouse personnel, they've got their simulators and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to try to kind of challenge them to look a little deeper into this thing and remind everybody that where we wind up with a lot of our people that we have. Entry-level jobs in all industries have become a problem, and we're not exempt from that. So there's been a shortage of deckhands, and you had to resist the temptation to hire warm bodies. And when you get into fleet work, particularly like we do, it's incredibly dangerous work. I mean, you don't realize the rapidity of the dangerous or potentially dangerous actions that we do many times in the course of a shift or watch. And you think of you really can't compare an ocean-going deckhand to a river towboat or tugboat or a harbor boat deckhand, because the deckhands on the tugboats, the harbor boats, towboats, they are engaged in the duties of the vessel. I mean, everybody advances the duties and the purpose of a vessel, but they're out there laying rigging, picking up barges, dropping barges, spotting them at terminals, getting them right alongside a crane, making sure they load them correctly. And I mean, there's just a lot that goes on. And I think that in the census industry, we've been a little remiss and taken for granted all these deckhands, these young people that come aboard, and some of whom don't stay, some of whom, though, develop a passion for the business. And then we say, oh, you can go into the wheelhouse. Well, there's a lot more opportunities for one than just the wheelhouse. That's a great opportunity. I mean, to denigrate it in any fashion at all. But in the speech, it kind of points out some of those things. And I just wanted to say that this is important stuff, and these people put their lives on the line for us every day, and we need to step up more, but not only for the moment, but for the future, because, there's a lot of people in this industry who started on the deck, particularly in middle and upper management and some of the chief executives we have. And there's stuff that you learn on the deck that you can't learn anywhere else.
Right.
And it can get it can become quite personal because it's something you've lived and experienced. Merritt Lane once told me that one of the great things that he joined from decking, one of his great memories, and one of the things that gave him a compassion for was safety. I said, really? He said, yeah, when you get slapped in the face with a cheater pipe, you appreciate safety real quick.
Sure.
So that's in the teamwork that's involved. I made my sons work on the deck, they said they wanted to be in the business. I said, you got to work at least 6 months on the deck. They worked more than that. But I said, because you get the position where you got to tell somebody to do a job, people on a boat, they're out there in inclement weather, and you're in an office nice and warm, and you give them orders or lay out a work plan for them or something like that without consulting with them, and just take things for granted. But if you know what is involved when you say, pick up this barge and deliver it to this particular point, times that are involved, whether or not they're going to face up, whether they're going to try to headline. And, certain times the river you headline, certain times you don't. And you got to be good when you do that stuff. And they need to understand that. So if you're a dispatcher, it's good to spend time on the deck. If you're logistics, other side of logistics, if you're in terminaling, it behooves you to have some knowledge of what is involved when you're asking somebody to do something. And then, of course, when you're a port captain or a port engineer or a marine superintendent, all of those people come up usually through the wheelhouse, but not necessarily. Mike Breslin, who works with AWO now and does their safety work and sustainability and all these other things, he started on the deck with turn services, came in and dispatch. Then we needed somebody to help out with personal injury claims and taking care of the guys when they have a personal injury. And we put him into that, and he learned about claims and about the law and contract stuff and all that. In the course of doing all that, he began to keep track of the training programs. And we always had a training program for the pilots, but not for the deckhands. And we put everybody on it. Even I was on it. When I was president of Turn Services, I was on the roster too. And I had things that I had to do. And, I had to keep my first aid and CPR. And I was as subject to drug screen as any deckhand or anybody else. And Mike Marshall at Turn instituted a program was when they were going to do a random drug screen, we encouraged them to do it on the crew change. So as you catch the crew leaving and the crew going, that way you can get more billets accomplished for drug screening at one time. But an officer of the company was always there to go on board with the drug screening, the drug sampling people. And they would go up to the master in charge of the watch and say, Captain, we're going to be doing urine samples on everybody for random drug testing. Do you want me to go first, or are you going to go first? And that was the attitude that we took. We're not exempt just because we're in the office. We've got to do this too.
Right.
And tell that to everybody. You just have to assume that you're subject to that. And it went to, we did it for barge washers and repair guys too, and everyone. We tried to make sure that we all had faced the same obligations, but we also got the same training to enable us to fulfill those obligations. So anyway, Mike kept going on all that. Then Sub M starts coming up, and by that time I was no longer president. Mario, that was a good thing when he sees it. And he went to Mike and said, Mike, would you come on and take over Sub M? So Mike got us all set up to qualify for Sub M and to be ready when the thing rolled out. And he did a great job at that. And then he was appointed to port captain. And then this job became available at AWO, and he took it, and he's doing a great job, and we're very proud of him. And there's a lot of people who've gone on from Turn Services to work for other companies, and they've all had very good, successful careers. And I think that's probably the one single thing in this industry that I'm proudest of. So I went up there to I flew up via Charlotte to Nashville, got a rental car. Jenny went with me, got up there on Tuesday night the 6th, then went to dinner with Z-Dave and Sharon Deloche, and saw a few people downstairs and had an adult beverage or two. Then the next day, went over to the WCI for a little bit, tore up my speech, started writing it again. You know, you don't want to say too much, you don't want to say too little. I thought I was getting a little wordy and preachy, so I tore that thing up and hopefully came up with something a little better. Of course, the 8th for the luncheon, we had the luncheon and the presentations to Jim Guidry, the River Bell, to myself for the River Legend, to two vessel crews, one from Marquette and one from Ingram for life-saving. And then Mary McCarthy talked about their putting together a new committee. I don't know if this is Siemens Church or AWO or who actually is doing this, but trying to document the number of life-saving incidents that happen in a year, because there were really a lot more. These two were just involved multiple lives being saved. So they got recognition, but trying to put a statistical pattern so we can see what kind of benefit we bring to the general public. One of the crews rescued was from a fishing boat. I think that was 3 guys, and then another one from a recreational craft. Like I said, the mariners always help people in distress, and we don't really usually give ourselves enough credit for it, but this is going to be a way to kind of pick it up. So that was about it. Really enjoyed it. It was great. Got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen in a long time. It was fun, and everyone was kind and gracious and not barking at me, so that was nice.
It's always a good start. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a good time.
So the night of the ceremony, were you the closer or in the middle, or how did they lay that out?
In the middle. So
Okay.
it was a luncheon, so it was in the afternoon.
Okay.
So they presented the awards to the boats for life saving, and then they presented the award to me for River Legend, and then they presented the award, the River Bell Award, to Jim Guidry, and everybody got up a little bit.
Are those awards given out for different, like what qualifies you for the Legend versus the Bell, or vice versa?
I don't really know. I can speculate, but I don't know. Kirby is, Jim Guidry, he's a legend in the industry. He served on Rita for so long. He was so active in Gulf Intercoastal Canal, engaged the Coast Guard so much. He really strong supporter of vessel personnel. He grew up on a boat. Yeah, he's a great person. He's a good guy, and he's very talented, competent at what he does. So he's their executive vice president of operations for Kirby Inland. And I don't, this is the way I look at it. The way I look at it is they try to get a little diversity, and Jim's a bulk liquid guy, and I'm a fleet guy. I get you some diversity. And they get somebody who's well-known. Jim's well-known in the industry, and I'm well-known in the industry. By putting those people together, they hope to get a better draw. This is a fundraiser. You remember that. So they get more people and more sponsors, and because you get enough sponsors to pay for all the food and everything, and then the tickets for the table are just, that's your profit. I'm from the fleet side. I was chairman of AWO. I've had some other industry awards that have been given to me. I know a lot of people. I've been in business 55 years, and Jim Guidry's a little behind me, maybe in the year range, but 2 or 3 years behind me. But he's had a long career also. So that's that. I think that's the purpose behind picking it. And I think that these guys, like the chairman, and then there's other people on those committees. I mean, Matt Woodruff was on there from Kirby. Mary McCarthy was there from Turn Services. I don't remember all the rest of them, but you could get a list. But I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to raise money for Seaman's Church Institute by honoring some people that have been in the business for a while. So if you serve in the industry for 55 years and you grow to be 75 years of age, other people have died off, the universe from which to pick somebody is smaller. So I guess that's how I got it. I don't know.
I'm sure there's a few reasons. That might be one of them. But anyway, if you don't mind, sir, please share with me the speech you gave to accept the River Legend Award.
Okay. I'm going to put on my cheaters here. So, and I'll try to read this thing like I delivered it. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this event and showing your support for Seaman's Church Institute and the work they do for our mariners and our industry. It's an honor to be standing here where so many outstanding men and women have stood. It is an honor to be on the same program with Jim Guidry. AWO sponsored a working luncheon in Houston with the captain of the port and his deputy. As the meeting wrapped up, the captain of the port asked if there was something anyone wanted to add. Jim Guidry stood up and said, I want to remind the Coast Guard and everyone here that first, Texas became part of the United States, not by purchase, nor conquest, nor annexation, but by a treaty between two sovereign nations, the Republic of Texas and the United States of America. Second, that in the state of Texas, the flag of Texas flies at the same height as the flag of the United States. Third, by an act of its state legislature, Texas may, at any time, divide itself into as many as 5 states. By now, my jaw dropped open. The captain of the port smiled and said, thank you for bringing that up, Jim. I was afraid we were going to finish a meeting in Texas without that being said. Mario introduced me. Mario, thank you for the introduction. After an AWO meeting in 2005, Mario was waiting to be picked up, and it was going to be a while. I asked him if he wanted to go to lunch. He said yes, and we went and got a po' boy. To make conversation, I asked Mario, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing our industry? He said that the people in the office think that what they do is what our industry does for a living. I was not expecting such wisdom from this young man. I instantly became a fan. I used to say I love this industry. Now I say I love the people in this industry. It is the people that make this industry and give it its personality. As I was starting Turn Services, my friend Jim Johnson said, what is the worst thing anyone can say about you when you go into business for yourself? I said, I guess that I didn't pay my bills. He said, no. The worst thing anyone can say about you is, yes, I worked for Frank Morton and I enjoyed the work, but I had to quit and get another job because I couldn't make enough to take care of my family. If someone works for you and works hard and you don't pay them enough to support their family, shame on you. If this is true about money, and it is, then it is even more so about keeping that person working for you safe. Our work is dangerous. We owe our people safety. The currency of our lives is every hour and day that we live. We cannot shortchange our teammates. Seaman's Church Institute is a primary source for training our mariners in efficient and safe methods of vessel operations. 3 times in my 55-year career, I've had to tell a parent, a spouse, a sibling, a child, that their son, husband, brother, father will never be coming home. It is my fervent desire, my fervent wish, and my fervent prayer that none of you ever have to do that. They were all 3 fleet deckhands. Our work is dangerous. We owe our people safety. We train our licensed mariners a great deal, as we should. Yet deckhands, the large pool from which our industry pulls all its licensed mariners, most of its lower and middle management, and a lot of its top management, are not typically exposed to so much formal training. Where does our industry find such people as Mark Canoy, Merritt Lane, Lee Nelson, George Foster, David Lane, Buckley McAllister, Mario Munoz, Z. Dave Deloche, Marty Heddle, Mike Marshall? I could keep this up all afternoon. By the way, yours truly. We all started on the deck. We need to put more training, money, and effort into developing this rich source of talent. I think Siemens Church Institute would be a great resource for this. Entry-level recruitment is an issue for every industry these days, and we, of course, are no exception. Companies, individuals, and industry associations are working on this and have made substantial progress. Aaron Howard with RiverWorks Discoveries, Who Works the Rivers, has exposed thousands of high school students to our industry, and some have joined our ranks. These programs have accomplished a lot because these high school students who opt for different career paths are at least aware that we exist. As my sons say, when you live your life at 6 miles an hour in a ditch or out of the sight of land, nobody knows what you do for a living. Aaron's program is expanding to new locations, but is dependent on funding through contributions. AWO has their Workforce Action Plan, which also looks to addressing impediments to entry into our industry at a federal and state level. There is military to Marine, local job fairs, and companies doing their own recruiting efforts. At Turn, we have Turn Tuesday almost every week. Things are gradually looking up. After the hire comes orientation, prepping, and training. Large companies and even medium-sized companies like Turn Services have decent existing programs. Smaller companies are limited in their ability to develop such internal resources. The support the new hires receive from their new crewmates and on-the-job training in the smaller companies still works, as it traditionally has done. We need to do more to help our future. Siemens Church Institute is well positioned to fill this role. Siemens Church Institute, thank you for this honor. I receive it on behalf of the men and women of Turn Services and Associated Terminals. I cannot name all the people who have helped me in my career, but there are some I must name. My immediate family, Jenny, we just celebrated our 52nd wedding anniversary. Frank Jr., Terry, Tim, my brother Patrick and his wife Tammy. My two long-term mentors, Ed Laurendine and Jim Bukey. My entire Turn associated family, especially David Finley, Gary Poirier, Mario Munoz, Todd Fuller, Kevin Charlton, Don Lopez, and Brad Chauvin. My long-term friends, Jim Harrington and Z. Dave Deloche. My supportive sounding board industry friends, George Foster, Mark Canoy, Buckley McAllister, Lee Nelson, Sherry Felder, Merritt Lane, Marty Heddle, Peter Stepich, Ted Togertha, Mike Marshall, and there are many more. I'll leave you with these thoughts, which will come in handy when dealing with each other and when dealing with Washington, D.C. First, show up. The late Representative Elijah Cummings told me this. He also said, if it's a fundraiser, show up with a check. But the most important thing is to show up. 2, you can't lead unless you lead by example. St. Augustine. Okay, it's a paraphrase. 3, it's not the mountain that wears you down, it's the pebble in your shoe. My mother. Be the pebble in the shoe of government. Litigation is the most expensive form of conflict resolution short of war. Stephen Merritt. You learn more from your failures than you ever do from your successes. Buddy Romer. One day, in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. Sigmund Freud. 55 years since I really used my Latin, but quis custodi ipsos custodes, Juvenal. Who will regulate the regulators? Only you can. Engage them. Express your issues and concerns. In a crisis, number 8, in a crisis or an opportunity, go big and go early. You can't cross a chasm in 2 small steps. George Lloyd George. And last, my favorite, William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, Act 4, Scene 3. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves or lose our ventures. Thank you for attending this luncheon. Thank you for your support of Seamen's Church Institute. Thank you for what you do every day for our industry, our communities, our nation, and the world. Good afternoon. Did you time it? I have no idea. I think it's between 8 and 10 minutes. But
I did not time it. I'm not worried about that. I've got nothing but time for you here. Thank you very much for sharing. Do you have any closing thoughts to share with any listeners out there?
well, I just hope somebody was listening. There's a lot of talent in that deckhand pool. A lot of talent that you don't see coming. It comes up when I've had people who come to work for us, and they had issues in their lives, and they didn't really know where they belonged, and they were just taking a job to kind of get away, be on board a boat for a while, not deal with other people. They found out they liked the people on the boats and they enjoyed doing it. They wound up making a career out of it. They wound up getting into different aspects of the industry. They had a tremendous passion for it. It's going to be hard to find somebody who understands the business. I'm not talking about counting the beans and stuff like that. I'm talking about the nuts and bolts of it, because people is what it all boils down to. If you've got the greatest technology in the world and you don't have people that are creative and can use it to bring out the best in others, you wasted your time and your money. So I just hope that people are paying enough attention and say, he's got a really good point. We need to spend more money on our deckhands. We need to check these guys out. We need to find out how much more talent they have. What's out there that we don't see? Had a number of guys that started out on the deck, wound up ashore for one reason or another. And the first thing they did is they went and they got their college degree, or they got certified in some professional aspect of their life that they thought would benefit them. And it did, but because they did that and they could talk with other people with confidence and with knowledge, they didn't mind speaking up so much. Sometimes people are reticent. We often think less of ourselves than others think of us. There's also some people think a lot more of themselves, but I don't think that's the normal condition of a human being. I think the normal condition of a human being is we're typically pretty hard on ourselves. Sure. And Robert Burns said, "Oh, the gift that God would give us to see ourselves as others see us." And I think he meant it both ways. He meant it for those who were egotistical and pompous to come down a notch, but he also meant for those who were trying but felt like they weren't always succeeding, that they need to give themselves a bit of a break. And, where God loves us as he loves his children, because we are his children. So, the gift that God would give us to see ourselves as others see us. It's a great thing. Probably got a little too preachy again, but anyway, I just think that this is important, and I would hate to see people just blow it off and not think there's anything to it, because we don't train these guys in a fashion that brings out the best of their ability. And that's what we need to do. We need to train them and educate them and pay them and schedule them and work with them as best we can. So when they have our jobs, they'll be doing that for other people. Got to pass it on down the line,
Sure,
so,
I do.
That's it.
Well, I do again. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
You said somebody had responded to it well, or they said they.
So there was another of my my guests that was in attendance and was very impressed by your presentation.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I hope you got the good part.
Well,
and the last thing about Shakespeare, of course, what he says basically is seize the day, grab the opportunity, or whatever. funny thing about it is that's before the Battle of Philippi, and that's Brutus telling Cassius that they must attack and meet Octavian and Mark Antony on the battlefield at Philippi while they still have the opportunity before they bring all their forces up. And of course, they didn't. They hesitated. And by the time began the battle, they were all wiped out. So Mark Antony and Octavian won. So
Right.
he didn't take the full sea when it arrived on their voyage, even though he was trying to get Cassius to do it. He turned him down, and they wound up costing them their lives.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I appreciate it, sir.
all right. Well, thank you, Tim. Take care. Anything I can do, let me know.
We'll be in touch, sir. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.